Hello, this is Meredith Lego, and welcome to my channel, which is Ascension Science. And I tend to cover topics around the science of ascension and the expansion of consciousness. And today I'm going to share with you an interesting experience, which is a little personal, but I think could have application for anybody who's going on this journey of experiencing all these kind of changes to their consciousness and to their body and wondering what's going on. This one relates specifically to changes in various chakras and the opening of chakras. So basically, um, if you're new to the channel, I basically have the ability to kind of connect with other kind of interdimensional or extra dimensional beings, if you will. And through that, I sometimes ask questions that help me understand kind of what's going on with the journey around ascension of consciousness. So in this particular case, I asked a question about an experience I had had while meditating, and it probably happened about 6 to 7, maybe 8 weeks ago, where I had this experience, and I was meditating with no recording. It was just kind of like silent meditation, which I prefer to do, and I basically felt a massive, almost like flowering of energy kind of go on over my head. And then, because I do have clairaudient abilities, I heard very, very succinctly the message that your 10th seal has opened. So the 10th seal has opened. And I was kind of like, what was that? So I finished my meditation and I sat on that and I sat on that. And I actually just bothered to ask what that was all about, I think this last week. But so it was pretty interesting, and I thought I'd share it again because you might be going through experiences where you're having various chakras that quote unquote open. So the answer I got was through the spans of time and much dimensional consciousness, energy portals have opened a way for passage of consciousness into various dimensional time matrices and systems. The 10th Stargate was one of those gates. You lifted your frequency and song and opened your 10th chakra, meaning for now, you are able to connect the 10th dimensional codes into your DNA and continue to accrete more light. This will allow passage through the 10th gate. So just kind of pausing right there. So they first kind of get into the concept of a Stargate. And I would say that, I've done some previous videos kind of exploring the concept of Stargates, and I'll try and include those in the description section of this video. But, I always thought Stargates could be like literally door passages that you go through, kind of like the movies. But found out, well, yes, there could be those, but mostly they're like energy portals that exist. And while there are different like gates like that throughout like the universe and the planet, oftentimes the gates that we would be going through are almost like inner gates, if you will, inner. It's almost like an ascension process, if you will. So you're kind of going within, and through that, you're able to kind of get certain keys, if you will, that will unlock your ability to pass through energy portals or through gates. And I have actually traveled through portals before. So my consciousness has traveled through portals before, and it's pretty interesting. It's almost very much like what's depicted in movies, where you're kind of going through a tube of energy, if you will, or like an arcing of energy. So I kind of understood what they were referencing when this statement was made. So what they're saying is that because I guess my frequency was at a certain point, which means that I was emanating a certain sound, a sound frequency, because they mentioned your song. So they're saying you lifted your frequency and your song and opened your 10th chakra, meaning that you now have the ability to connect the 10th dimensional codes, which might be like, the keys that you can do to open certain energy portals, into your DNA and continue to accrete more light, which means you're allowing more photonic light to pass into you and to connect into your light body, which is kind of like an etheric body. That's almost the template from which your physical body can come together. This will allow passage through the 10th gate. The flowering of energy was the opening of the seal. Interesting that they said that, although that was what I had heard. I had heard your 10th seal has opened. And then they say, so the flowering of energy was the opening of the seal, like opening of a camera lens, letting in more light and more frequency. So when I was hearing this, I was kind of seeing an image of, I don't know the technical term for it, but like when you like have a camera and you're like, moderating the lens, it's almost like there's a shutter that's opening and closing, if you will. So it was like that shutter's kind of opening and more light is coming in. Then they said you simply, so this kind of flowering was going off. It was letting in more light and more frequency. And then they said you simply were sensitive to feeling that energy opening, and that energy passed through your chakra because it had been dormant prior. So I guess, yay, exciting for me. So like that was kind of, it was interesting because it was very prolific. It was very noticeable. So I was meditating and all of a sudden I felt almost like this like flower going off over my head. And they said this is why the Buddhic traditions show a flower lotus over the crown. Your opening was 6 to 8 inches above the head. And when you do this in combination with other humans doing this on your planet, it opens the door to more humans having this greater potential as well. And so that's very positive. I think, obviously we'd all, I guess, want to have our 10th chakras opened. The opening of the 10th chakra also enables the relaying of more energy frequencies into the thymus and thyroid, which will help with immunity and metabolism. Then I asked, what is a seal? Because that kind of piqued my interest originally when I heard them say that. And the answer I got is a seal is a frequency block. Then I asked, why was a seal on my 10th chakra? The answer is the seals were placed before on DNA strands of humans in the light body templates and in the Earth's 10th Stargate to keep humanity from prematurely and organically ascending in consciousness before a level of spiritual maturity had been reached. Later, the potential for this process was co-opted by conscious species who wanted to keep humans from understanding their full genetic and conscious potential in order to keep them trapped in a closed loop system. These groups need your energy. So before kind of going on, while I was asking about like, why is the seal on my 10th chakra? The answer was the seals, plural, which leads me to believe that there might be other seals on other chakras. And, maybe what we're doing is sort of, by our frequency, by our octave, by our just kind of consciousness, slowly being able to kind of open them up. It sounds like, from what they're saying, and it reminds me of another channeling that I had done, and I think it was the Pleiades. It was like, Pleiades is a large star system, but it must have been a group from the Pleiades who basically said there was kind of like a frequency net, if you will, that was kind of put over Earth, really to keep others safe from, sounds like safe from humans. So I guess if you get certain knowledge about certain ascension protocols, and you're not in the right frame of mind to not use those potentials with the best and highest good of all involved. Let's say if you're using it for personal gain, you can cause a lot of harm in the universe. And so I think what they're implying is that, you know, in some cases, maybe we've not done some great things in the past. And as a result, these seals were put on until we were at the point of a species where we had the spiritual maturity enough, I guess, for unity consciousness in order to sort of, be able to kind of continue to move up the ladder of ascension, so to speak. But then what they're saying is that, so these seals were put in place. I'm not quite sure who by. So, I, would love to explore that a little bit more. But at some point, there was another group that sort of, or a species that co-opted this process and essentially used it to keep humans from really understanding the full genetic and conscious potential, and kind of keep them trapped into a closed loop system, which I'm guessing infers like the incarnational process of kind of repeated incarnations. So this group's needs your energy. So I'm guessing it's the incarnational reoccurring process on Earth itself. And again, I did like a series of 3 videos on really how to move past that. And a lot of it has to do with clearing traumas inside of your DNA. But that was the way to kind of, clear that, to move past that. Yeah, so I think that's all that they relayed really on the concept of the seals and what they are. So basically, because the channeling basically obviously got into the 10th chakra, I was interested in understanding more about what the 10th chakra was connected to, because I do know that they're connected to various endocrine body parts. And it's almost like they're the portals through which energy essentially connects into your body through the endocrine system. And the 10th chakra is connected to the thalamus. So I didn't know what that was. So I kind of, looked that up. So the thalamus basically is a gland that's in the middle of the brain. And nerve fibers project out of the thalamus in the cerebral cortex area, allowing hub-like exchanges of information. So I basically looked this information up online. It relays sensory signals, including motor signals, to the cerebral cortex, and in the regulation of consciousness, sleep, and alertness. So I'm not sure what role the seal had in essentially moderating or regulating our consciousness. I could see that being, played out if essentially they were not quite open, enough, it certainly would impact our ability to evolve our consciousness, I guess. So that's kind of what the thalamus does. I think the channeling also referenced the fact that when the chakra opens, it relays more energy and frequencies to the thymus and the thyroid, which obviously are other glands as part of the endocrine system. So I wanted to relook those up because I think I had looked them up before with previous channelings. And the thymus is basically a gland that is kind of behind the sternum, if you will, and if I get that right, basically behind the bone that kind of protects the lungs, and it sits in between the top of the lungs. Now they reference that it helps with immunity, which I looked that up and it did. And then the thyroid actually sits on either side of the thorax, inside of the throat, and that helps regulate metabolism. That's what they mentioned here as well. So that could have just been my consciousness kind of, trying to connect the dots on that as the information was coming in. But what's interesting is that throughout this entire ascension process, I've essentially had a lot, and I never had this my entire life. I essentially have had a lot of energy come up through my throat, and I tend to have cough a lot. And you'll see me do this on the videos too, where I'm kind of coughing. It's because I'm getting a strong tickling sensation inside my throat. And I know that I'm working to kind of clear energy through there. So obviously when this 10th chakra opened, my tickling increased dramatically because I had a lot more energies that were really pushing through into these specific areas. So I guess it was helpful for me to connect the dots why it was picking up. Maybe didn't have so much to do with the fact that it's allergy season, more as the fact that, you know, these energies are really starting to, I guess, penetrate more through this particular chakra. So anyway, like I said, this is a little bit of a personal experience, but I wanted to share it because, you know, we all go through body changes, I guess you could say, as we're going through this ascension process. And you know, I've talked about the idea of ascension symptoms. And so when these things happen, some of us are, you know, it's hard to find resources to go to and kind of learn and talk about it. So I thought I'd share my experience because it might be helpful to you at some point on your journey if you, you know, start to open up a specific chakra and then be able to figure that out. I think that's also important to realize that apparently some of our chakras have intentionally been blocked or have quote unquote seals on them. So the idea of really working to remove some of those seals sounds like is something that, you know, maybe in the beginning was, you know, almost like there was a group that might have been like, you know, trying to care for the children and make sure that the children were growing in a nice steady pace. But, you know, at some point, another group came over and said, oh, these seals are in place. Let's take advantage of that. So now's our time to realize that maybe we need to work past on opening these seals so that we can essentially get our sovereignty fully under our control. So with that, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Hey, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who you think the content might resonate with. So with that, talk to you later. Bye.